Welcome back to the Dynasty Heat Seekers podcast. I forgot to start recording, so we're going to do that again. Welcome back to the Dynasty Heat Seekers podcast. I'm your host, Rick Butts, here with the legendary Brad Menendez. And tonight we're going to talk some general news. We're going to field a bunch of fantasy questions, whether it's trade questions or uh, just where somebody should go with their team at this point of the season, or whatever the questions may be. We're going to answer those, and then we're going to talk about some players that you should be able to count on for the rest of the season. So, Brad, how was your day?
We can just keep moving on. I can't say it's been the greatest week, but how are you doing?
Just busy, busy, busy. So, to start off the news, we had a couple trades yesterday. Emmanuel Sanders getting traded to the 49ers, and Mohamed Sanu getting traded to the Patriots. And then today, Josh Gordon goes on the IR, and initial news was he's done for the year. And then, like a half hour later, it's he could show up with another team here soon because he says that he thought he might be able to return this week. So a lot of confusing stuff there. But first off, Mohamed Sanu was the first move. With him going to the Patriots, do you think this helps, hurts, or are you indifferent on his fantasy outlook now that he is getting moved?
Obviously the Josh Gordon news kind of brings his value maybe into a little question, just because it gives him opportunity. But I mean, the problem we have is, um, really the only targets I see him getting would be the ones that would have gone to, say, tight ends. And then some of Josh Gordon's targets. But with N'Keal Harry coming back from injury and potentially getting in the lineup quickly, I mean, you may only get a week or two of the overflow of Josh Gordon targets and tight end targets that could move to Sanu. You don't know if James White's going to get involved in that. I mean, there's so many questions, and there's probably more questions than our answers at this point. I mean, we really need to see how if Sanu fits in their offense, because just because they traded for him doesn't mean he's going to be, able to pick up that playbook quickly. I mean, he's a veteran and he seems to be smart. He's a Rutgers guy, so we know Belichick automatically likes him. But I think there's some value. But like I said in my YouTube video, I wouldn't pay much more than like a late second or a third for him. I just don't. I can't envision there being a huge amount of value for him. What do you think about Sanu going to New England?
Now, I think it's a great move for Sanu. I think that it's obvious the Patriots are going to use him. I mean, they traded a second round draft pick for him. That's
Big.
pretty extensive. A lot of people think it's an overpay. Um, they're going to incorporate him, and we just saw. I mean, last year Josh Gordon moved over there and was on pace for 1,000 yards in a mid-season move. Uh, he played 11 games with them last year, and even though I'm a Josh Gordon fan, if Josh Gordon can pick up the playbook, I think Mohamed Sanu can do the same. So I'm not that worried about it, especially since, I mean, this is a dink and dunk offense. It's not like Sanu's going to be, he doesn't have to, get open on long routes. So he has always succeeded in those shorter type routes. He's not going to be, uh, uh, he's not going to replace Josh Gordon's routes. And
Right.
then when you look at Josh Gordon, there's a reason why Josh Gordon didn't fit that offense. One, Josh Gordon is a downfield threat. Okay, I was just doing the research because somebody in the fantasy group said Josh Gordon's been terrible. Well, Tom Brady averages 7.21 air yards per attempt.
Not
Okay,
Josh Gordon.
that's that's less than Eli Manning was averaging. They call the Arizona Cardinals offense, the horizontal offense, they average more. Kyler Murray averages more air yards per attempt. So, I mean, he was 28th out of all quarterbacks that had thrown 45 or more passes. And that's fine. You know, it's not that Tom Brady's terrible and doesn't get it downfield, but I mean, if you were watching the game on Monday night, they kept talking about how, like, out of his last 35 passes or something, 18 of them happened in under 2.5 seconds, and 17 of them happened in under 2 seconds. Your downfield threats aren't going to get open
Exactly.
in that amount of time.
No.
And Josh Gordon was also, if you look at, the cushion given by uh, defensive backs, he ranked as one of the worst wide receivers in amount of cushion given because they knew if all we have to do is put a hand on Josh Gordon and Tom Brady's going to throw it before he can even have an opportunity to get open.
Right.
So, there was a lot of stuff there. He just didn't really fit that offense. And I'm not that concerned. I know a lot of people are really hype about Harry coming in this year, but after missing over half the year, like I'm not, or around half the year, I'm not real concerned about him coming in and being a big target hog or
Oh
anything.
no.
I think that you're going to see a lot of Sanu and a lot of and then Edelman just like he has been because those
Sure.
two guys fit that. If you look at all the wide receivers on the Patriots, all of them were under 10 yards except for Philip Dorsett in air yards per target. Like you can go and look at how bad the Bears have been, and four of their receivers average over 10 yards per target. And maybe that's part of the issue. Maybe they should go down to that 7-8 range like the Patriots do since their quarterback's not accurate over that. But I don't know. This offense just fits Sanu, I feel like. I feel like it's the perfect fit. I'm not as concerned about uh, the playbook. But the other thing to think about is that when he was in Atlanta, in the passing game alone, he was fighting Julio for red zone targets, Hooper, Ridley, and even Devonta Freeman, who had three touchdowns receiving before he got kicked out, in the previous 2 weeks, before he got kicked out of the game last week. So, I mean, you could say he was the fourth or fifth option in the passing game,
Yep.
where here he could be the second or third with Josh Gordon likely leaving.
Right. No, that makes
And
sense.
we know the Patriots will put up points.
They always do.
Um, okay, so what do you think about Emmanuel Sanders' move to the 49ers?
That made a lot of sense. I mean, very similarly, what you're talking about New England, we have this here. Dante Pettis hasn't really shown out like people expected. Debo Samuel's been hurt. Marquise Goodwin obviously has a track record of being hurt. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders seems like a perfect fit for this offense. They can move him around. He can play inside. He can play outside. I mean, this is the receiver that Kyle Shanahan needed. And it's sick because they already are, one of the best teams in the NFC. So you add somebody like Emmanuel Sanders. But the thing that I love about this trade more so is my Cortland Sutton shares look even better now.
Yeah, and that's like my take. Like everybody immediately started talking about Deshaun Hamilton, and my initial take was, hell yeah for
Cortland
Cortland
Sutton.
Sutton,
Well, he was already on
because
pace for like 1,200 yards, before.
yeah, almost 1,300, but uh, he's now the clear cut number one. I mean, there were still questions. I mean, at the beginning of the year, there were definitely questions, and as it progressed, it became obvious that Cortland Sutton was breaking out. But I think that he's going to get at least a little bit of that volume.
Sure.
And then there is going to be an uptick for Hamilton, but we don't even know if Hamilton's any good. I mean, last year he was getting outshined by Tim Patrick
Right.
towards the end of the year. So we don't even know if Hamilton's good. So I'm not like super stoked about him, but we will get a chance to see some of it. Fant, everybody, has been talking about him getting a bump, but Fant hasn't, the opportunity's been there.
Mm-hmm.
I shared on the Facebook group also, if you look at Denver's air yards, and I'm pulling it up right now so I make sure I get the numbers right. But just over the last 3 weeks, um, Noah Fant had 145 air yards. Do you know how many receiving yards he's had over the last 3 weeks?
How many?
29.
Oh, gosh.
Okay, so he's only caught 4 of his 9 targets. So he's averaged 3 targets per game, and they're downfield targets. I mean, he clear cut. I mean, he's averaging 3 more yards uh, per target than Cortland Sutton. So the opportunity's been there for him. He has to start doing something with that before they're going to up that volume. You got when to put that in perspective. Over the last 3 weeks, Cortland Sutton has had 301 air yards and he has 255 receiving yards.
It's nice.
Noah Fant 145 with 29 receiving yards. So I do love Noah Fant.
Right.
But he's got to start doing something with those targets before I think that is gonna grow any. Um,
Well, and
looking at
and
Go ahead.
I would just say, think about some of the guys that are maybe a little deeper on the roster. Those are guys that could potentially get upticks. Royce Freeman, we've seen him getting more passes thrown his way. I would expect them to kind of move it around and shift the who's getting the balls thrown their way. I have not jumped on Deshaun Hamilton. I've got offered him quite a few times in quite a few leagues, and I'm like, no, I'll hold. I'm good. Because not only that, I don't see that being the long-term solution. Like, they're going to get another receiver in this offense come next year, and unless Deshaun Hamilton balls out, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, his opportunity is definitely going to grow. I mean, he only had 7 targets over the last three
Right.
weeks, so that's going to definitely grow a little bit. But what are you going to do with those targets? And that's how we're gonna see it shake out. Long term, it may not be any of these other wide receivers, the Deontay Spencers, Fred Browns, etc. It may just mean that they look to bring in another young receiver next year or something. Um, so for the dynasty purposes, yeah, I think if you're in a redraft and you are shallow, Deshaun Hamilton in a PPR league is definitely worth a look.
Sure.
I wouldn't prioritize him over some guys until we see what he's going to get without Emmanuel Sanders there. But looking at the 49ers and Emmanuel Sanders, a lot of people have already been, the first thing they say is San Francisco doesn't throw the ball. Well, here's what happens. They're not going to throw, very many deep passes. But what happens is your, Richie James and Kendrick Bournes are now completely irrelevant. And Emmanuel Sanders is going to soak up all those targets that were shared between them and Pettis. And he's going to be the target hog there. He's probably going to see, 20% of the passing work there, which is going to work out to 7-ish targets per game, probably 7, 8. And I think that's going to uh, it could hurt Kittle a little bit. He could get some of those Kittle targets, um, but he's going to get volume. Pettis isn't going to get the volume. Marquise Goodwin isn't going to get the volume, and Deebo Samuel currently isn't going to get the volume. It's going to be Emmanuel Sanders and George Kittle. They might soak up 60% of the passing game.
Easily, easily. But Samuel's also hurt still. I think he still is in.
Yeah,
So he's been.
but he's still a rookie,
yeah.
so he's not gonna. He's still got some time to work on, especially on a team that is, currently undefeated and playing really good. The other thing that you have to think about is that this passing volume is going to go up because when you look at their schedule, like, it has not been hard so far. I mean, other than like the Rams game, but I mean they dominated that. But I mean they're going to have more competitive games going forward, and you'll see that pass game, volume-wise, take an uptick, and it's not going to be like a huge. They're not going to throw it 500 times or anything, but there will be a bigger uptick. But I mean, those two guys are going to soak up so much of the targets that it's not going to matter on that team.
Absolutely.
And again, it's I'm not worried about learning the plays or anything like that. Not on the short stuff. If it was like if this was AJ Green getting traded to one of these teams, more of a deep threat and somebody that hasn't played for the first half of the season, I would be a little more concerned about them being able to connect. But I feel like those little short routes, timing may be a little off at first, but I think it'll be a quick fix um, on those.
Yeah.
Uh, Before we do anything else, I want to make sure we get some of these questions while these guys are here. Ben Suarez says, which two would you start in full PPR? Just a caveat to anybody that has to start sit, you got to make sure you continue paying attention throughout the week because different stuff, can come up. But we'll answer them. Juju, Keenan Allen, T.Y. Hilton, full PPR, which two you starting?
Ty and Keenan in my mind.
Ty and Keenan easily for me. Ty I think is actually fourth in the league in average per game fantasy production in
Yep.
PPR. Obviously I think they had a bye and he was hurt or he was hurt 2 games, so he's only played 5 games I think.
Yep.
Um, but Ty is the easy start. Keenan Allen's gonna get the targets. I'm just not sure what to do with Juju at this point. Um, Not when you have options at least. Evan Kavanaugh says, standard league, I need 2 wide receivers and 1 flex between Marvin Jones, Kenny Stills, DJ Moore, Golden Tate, and Devonta Freeman. And this is standard.
Need 2 wide receivers, 1 flex between Marvin, Stills, DJ Moore. Wow. Marvin Jones going against the Giants, I would expect to be a pretty decent game. And probably Golden Tate and Devonta Freeman. I don't trust Stills, even though there is some injuries there. And DJ Moore, the passing volume is just super low right now. So that kind of be my take. What do you think, Rick?
I'm actually pulling something up here because I want to look at that. I just think there's too many targets for DJ Moore to sit him.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's seeing 8 targets per game, close to it. Uh, the passing volume there is low, but when you look at the fact that Olsen's basically been non-existent the last few weeks. Let me see. They were off this week, right?
Yeah.
Week
They were
7
week
they
7.
had off. So let me put in 4 and let's look at the last 3 weeks. Last 3 weeks, DJ Moore has 23 targets, so almost 8 per game, leading the team. And his market shares 24%.
He's
And
leading
you
the
look,
team in snap count as well. He's averaging over 60 snaps.
so in the last 3 games, he's averaging 65, little over about 69 yards per game, and about 5.3 receptions per game, which doesn't matter for that, but the TDs are the issue with standard, and I'm never thinking touchdowns, and because I play all PPR, but that could be the stickler there. I mean, 65 yards only gets you 6.5 points there, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, Marvin Jones, I think is for sure. Um,
The thing that I had was with the Tate piece is that Detroit's secondary is just brutal. They just traded Diggs. Darius Slay probably won't play because he's hurt, and their defense just hasn't been really all that successful. So it felt like with Golden Tate being kind of their best receiver and Evan Ingram, I mean, it seemed like, lately he's been getting peppered with targets. And he makes the most of his targets, and he's going to know how to destroy his former team. So it felt like those two. Devonta Freeman was kind of the one where I was like, their
and that's
offensive
my
brutal.
thing. I agree with Golden Tate. Mine comes between the other 3. Freeman's done most of his damage through the air here recently. They haven't been running the ball very well, and they just throw so many times because they literally can't stop anybody. Um, I'm starting Marvin Jones and DJ Moore, and Marvin Jones and Golden Tate for sure. Uh, and then I'd probably lean Devonta Freeman there, maybe. That third one's the tough one,
Yeah.
that flex spot for you. I definitely do Tate and Jones. Um,
And I'd keep an eye on maybe how the rest of the week goes when it comes to, you know, um, what's going on in Detroit. I mean, because there's a lot of guys injured right now, and Marvin Jones had the game of his life, which typically after the game after he comes back down to earth. So, I would keep an eye on it because I love DJ Moore. Like of the guys here, DJ Moore is my favorite player that he's listed here, but because the pass offense in Carolina is so suspect, I'm like, well,
See, I don't think it's a lot better now than it is with Cam Newton.
oh, well, yeah. I mean, that's for certain. But
They do play. Oh wait.
Carolina's playing
They San Francisco.
San Francisco this week. So
You're playing Devonta Freeman. Yeah, I forgot it was San Francisco. I think both their outside cornerbacks give up like 30 yards per game.
shut it down.
I agree. CMC is the only guy I'm starting from Carolina this week. Ben Fisher says, did a buy low, sell, high trade today? Edmonds and Woods for OBJ. Thoughts?
I think I like. What do you think? Let me think about that first.
I am hoping and praying that Ben is the one that traded Edmonds and Woods for OBJ because that is a huge win. OBJ way ahead of those guys. I'm definitely on the OBJ side. Without question, far and beyond, I would prefer OBJ by a landslide. No problem, Evan. We worked through that one pretty good, I think.
We had to think it through.
That was a good one. Those are the start sit questions that I like. I hate when somebody's like, tell me I need to start 2 out of these 4 guys, and it's like Cooper Kupp, Keenan Allen,
DeAndre Hopkins. Like, what does it matter? One of them.
Yeah, it's like just flip coins, bro. Start all the studs. Do it.
Yeah, I mean, OBJ obviously is the for sure there, but it doesn't make sense to me why, like Chase Edmonds, you can see them getting him more involved in the offense, but like, why would you even consider Woods and Edmonds being even close to equal value with OBJ? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, it seems like a really weird trade, and your league, guys are probably making fun of the guy for that. But I like Chase Edmonds though. Like, I think he moving forward could be a really nice long-term play, but not enough to trade him for OBJ. Like,
no, and I mean, here's the thing, okay? David Johnson's not going away, and Edmonds had literally like the game of his life. Like, no, I mean like most guys. Okay. He had more 20-yard rushing touchdowns in one game than David Johnson has had in his career. Okay?
Right.
That game on Sunday was ridiculous, and you're not going to get that out of Chase Edmonds every game. He's definitely a sell high. OBJ. Okay, the diva thing, I don't care. The dude balls out.
Right.
Okay? Their offense is in shambles. The dude balls out. He doesn't get suspended. He gets fined for wearing, short shorts and watches and everything, and he is a diva, but the guy balls out, and that offense is going to improve. Baker's going to improve because they're just not going to stay that bad.
Right.
And in long term, OBJ is definitely the play. Robert Woods is older. We're already seeing that offense decline. Plus, he's fighting with 3 other people in the passing game there with Gerald Everett, coming forward this year. So, Taylor says, "Hey dudes, I bid." Oh wait, did we finish that question? Oh yeah. Taylor says, I bid 40 of 100 to get Ty Johnson, but I'm 1-6. Would you sell to a contender for a third or hold out for more after some production?
I'd probably hold out. I mean, when it comes to, unless you're trying to rebuild, like, I'm not trading for picks right now unless I'm selling at the deadline to, because my team's not a contender. So unless unless your team isn't contending, that would be the only reason I trade for picks right now. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'll take the picks now because they get more expensive the longer you go. The closer we get to the end of the season, the closer we get to the draft, the more expensive picks get. Now, I'm not going to trade him if I just picked him up. I'm not going to trade him until he gets at least one start. Um, the way I see it, that $40 out of your $100 budget that you spent, it means nothing. Like, I don't value my free agent budget in dynasty leagues at all because there's an unlikely scenario that you're going to pick out a player. I'm surprised Ty Johnson is on your waiver wire to begin with.
Right.
Like, I would have put 100 on him. Like, I put 77 that I had left in one league on Zach Pascal. Because you just don't know. You don't what are the odds unless you're in a shallow league. I mean that depends too. Most of my leagues are deep that I play in, so there's not very much on the waiver wire. They're all complete dart throws. But if he starts and does well, I mean he played well after Carrion went out. Fantasy wise, at least I didn't watch the game.
Right.
But if he gets some fantasy points this week, you're going to be able to get better than the third.
Yeah, I would think so. You're right.
And I just think the risk is so low because it's 40% of your fab budget.
Right.
If you would have traded or drafted him with a third round pick or a fourth round pick, then I think that's a little more value that you've spent. So you could, get a better pick or something like that, and you're risking losing that pick entirely if you keep him. If he does nothing and is never valuable with 40% of your budget, you're not really losing at that point. It's just a shot like you're gonna take on any other guy.
Right. No, true story.
All right, I think those are the we are streaming on Twitter for the first time. I forgot to tell you, we're everywhere.
Yeah.
We're everywhere. I
Know
don't
that. I'll
know.
have to go over on Twitter and share it. Didn't realize that.
Yeah, I meant to tell you, we didn't really get a chance
Catch up today.
to chat before we started streaming, but yeah, we are on Twitter for the first time. Um, so,
See it.
what other news we got? We talked about Emmanuel Sanders. We talked about Josh Gordon. Well, I guess the one thing about Josh Gordon, where does he end up? Because if he's healthy, I mean, unless there's some underlying news, which there's been no even inclination except for, internet trolls saying, oh, he must have got caught with weed or something. Like, if you look into the actual football side of it, it makes sense 100% why he doesn't fit the Patriots. Um, but where do you think's the landing spot for this guy? Because I have one in mind, and it makes me sick to my stomach.
Well, in my mind, I'm trying to think of the teams that are kind of wide receiver needy that also would think they have a chance for a playoff push. So if like a Will Fuller is hurt for long term, maybe Houston could make sense because they need another deep threat. Those are kind of the things that are coming up in my mind. But really, he could go anywhere. I mean, he could go to a team like Arizona, who's won 2 or 3 in a row, and they're starting to get a little, they're starting to feel their oats a little bit. But I want to know who makes you sick. Like thinking about it, nobody makes me sick other than, like
other than Green Bay.
I think Green Bay's going after AJ Green. That's who I think. I was reading I was flipping through some of the Green Bay like sports sites here recently because they keep talking about receiver help, and I saw a couple of guys post just a little blurbs about how AJ Green makes sense, and I would rather see him get AJ Green, but that would be disgusting if Josh Gordon went there. And as a Lions fan, I would hate that.
I don't want to see that at all. I mean, I don't want to see AJ Green go there either, but I'm not as worried about AJ Green. I don't even know what if this dude is going to be healthy. I mean, there's no like. Has he practiced this week?
Limited basis.
He has been limited this week,
Yeah.
so he has at
Yep.
least been practicing. Yeah, I mean, I don't want them to get any receiver, but if Josh Gordon went there and actually had Aaron Rodgers, who gets outside of the pocket and gives his receivers time to get open down the
That'd be
field,
sick. That'd be.
oh God! I mean, Kumaro had a 65-yard touchdown, whatever it was last week. I do
Uh,
not want but you know what? There's been a lot of Green Bay fans in in the Facebook group that have just been bashing Josh Gordon. So I want to see how quickly they turn
that's
if he
trouble.
goes in there and explodes. Could you imagine him and Devontae Adams opposite each other? I
That'd
mean,
be
Jesus, it'd
ridiculous.
be stupid.
That'd be ridiculous.
Yeah, I think the New York Giants are another place. Obviously, wide receiver needy. They don't really have that outside receiver. Sterling Shepard and uh, Golden Tate are both more underneath type guys. Let's see who else we got here. Kevin Macon says Steelers fan. I am one. Um, Over on Twitch, Steelers could use an outside receiver.
They've got plenty of receivers. They just need somebody to throw on.
They don't. Well, yeah, but I mean, their outside receivers haven't done anything. I mean, okay, for one, we went through the Moncrief thing in the offseason. The dude's made of concrete. He's like the guy from the Fantastic Four guy. He's just a rock, and he can't catch anything. He just hits him, and then, I mean, not quite like Ben Watson in the face hit, but that was funny the other
That
night.
was pretty hilarious.
Literally right in the eye. Right in the eye. Uh, let's see who else we got in the playoff. I mean, San Francisco. You know, another one. Like they, even though they added Sanders, like they need that outside threat.
That'd be wild.
Um, yeah, they go from having like no receivers to having Emmanuel Sanders and Josh Gordon. Um,
I
I
mean, I
gotta.
could think of a team like Seattle. They don't need it, but with Will Disley going down, adding another receiver that could help uh, with some deep stuff. I mean, they have Metcalf and they have Lockett, but they don't have a lot behind that. You know, so that'd be a team that I don't think they need them, but who knows? I mean, you can never have too many great players on your team. Uh,
The Ravens.
yeah, I mean,
I mean, they got the young Marquise Brown, but
uh,
other than him, I mean, Willie Snead's really the only other one. Oh, geez, could you imagine the Browns? Like, what if they had
he
OBJ?
goes back.
If they bring him back and Gordon on the other side and Landry underneath? That's not happening, people. I
No,
don't
that's
really
not
think that's
happening.
going to happen.
Shot
The
takers
Colts.
and yeah, no. Oh yeah.
The Colts. I mean, we talked. I mean, Pascal's like their top receiver outside of T.Y. Hilton right now. So uh, that uh, the Raiders. That would be like the worst thing that could happen to Josh Gordon.
Yeah, he would.
If Josh
He'd fall
Gordon
off the
goes to the
wagon there for
Raiders,
sure.
yeah, he'd be like in the first pregame conference, like chugging beers and
Checking himself
smoking
into
weed.
rehab.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
rough.
yeah, there are some options for him. I definitely do not want to see him go to Green Bay.
No, no. But Green
Part of me
Green Bay will
does.
add a receiver. I mean, they have to. There's so many.
Part of me does just because so many Green Bay fans have talked shit about him that I would love for him to go there and just like explode.
Be
And
hilarious.
then my I told you so, like it probably hurts them less, but they get to see it happen. Paul says, how far off is a 2020 top 5 pick in Deshaun Watson for Mike Evans in a 1 QB league? For me, it's way off.
It was they say a
Like
2020 second.
2020 top 5 pick, Deshaun Watson for Mike Evans. Like that quarterback, like if I have Mike Evans, I'm never trading him for a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the time of year where top 5 first round picks are that exciting for people. So I would need more. And even come draft time, like I'm a big Mike Evans fan, and he's still young. What is he, 25? I mean, he's
Yeah,
going to
26, I
hold
think.
the way that he plays. His game isn't predicated on speed, so he could go into his mid 30s, 32, 33, and still be successful as long as
He gets a good quarterback.
well, as long as he gets a good quarterback would be the big thing. So I would move him for that. I would need, quite honestly, I'd probably need another, first or second involved in that trade.
Like, I mean, I'm the type of guy in Dynasty 1 QB. I'm rarely ever going to pay a late first for a quarterback. Like, I'm not gonna. I just it doesn't matter to me. I can piece together stuff. I just, instead of going after a top tier guy, I just traded for Andy Dalton in a 1 QB league because I'm fine with that rather than spending that capital on a quarterback. I'm going to need another player, another position. Like if it's a top 5 pick and, a wide receiver that I like, then we might be getting close. I'm probably still, I mean, you're probably not going to give up enough capital in one receiver for me to even accept that.
Yeah, that'd be tough.
Like, you might, if somebody says, okay, like a Juju and a top 5 pick, then, we might be able to get there. But they're selling low on Juju, and I don't think people are ready to do that yet.
I don't know why you'd want to.
So,
Like everybody knew there was going to take some time for Juju to kind of get into his groove, as the number one receiver on the team. Like he's still got value.
yeah, I definitely won't say that I called this because Ben Roethlisberger didn't play. So, like, I'm not going to say that I called it, but um, he does look like
Sounds
he could
good.
use some help on the outside. Cali dude said I was undefeated until last week. Kamara was out for me, and the guy I played had Aaron Rodgers. That
Ouch.
definitely sucks.
Okay, yeah.
Definitely sucks. Just so everybody knows, we are fielding questions. So no matter where you're watching, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, wherever, make sure you drop uh, your questions in the chat. It doesn't matter what it's about. Fantasy football. I mean, that's what we're gonna keep it about. But yeah, you drop those and we'll answer them. So I'm the only one who likes 2020 picks as much as I do. Got it. No, it's I have Mike Evans in my top 10 Superflex rankings. Like, Mike Evans is really freaking good. His quarterback's not. He's getting the volume. He's everything's there except for QB accuracy. Okay? I'm sorry, but Godwin is not like overtaking Mike Evans. Okay, we can look. I'm pulling up Tampa Bay right now. Okay, 1, 2. Oh, we need week 3 and week 7. We got all the weeks in there. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans have exactly the same amount of targets. Okay, so they're like the pseudo 1A, 1B, whatever you want to call them. But Godwin's not running away with that. What's happening here is the targets that Mike Evans gets are not as easily convertible, especially with an inaccurate quarterback. So his A dot is 15.1, which is great, but he's only caught 27 at his 55, whereas Godwin's is around 10 yards, 10 to 11 yards, or 11 and a half here, more easily convertible, and he's caught 43 of his 55. So that's where the difference is with those two guys. Mike Evans is still premium. If Mike Evans got traded to Green Bay, I would throw up in my mouth and he'd probably go berserko and I'd hate my life. What are your thoughts?
Sorry,
That one makes me angry. Mike Evans is just too good to trade for that.
yeah. I mean, it's tough when you get these people. The thing that you need to do is during the season, don't freak out just because a guy is not performing the way that you would expect him to through a few weeks. I mean, if he was elite going into the season, that shouldn't change just because he has sloppy quarterback play and, I mean, factors around him have come in. Like, Mike Evans has been a top 5 asset for a few years now. Like, what would have changed enough for you to sell him for a top 5 pick, which you don't know who it's going to be, and a quarterback, especially if it's not super flex? Like, I don't sell it. Like, I don't sell at that, or I don't buy, I should say, at that point. If somebody's willing to give me Mike Evans for that, I'd sell it in a heartbeat. I mean, that is what it is. But people just need to relax. Like, there's stalwarts that you just don't trade unless you're getting a crazy amount. Same with DeAndre Hopkins. I've had plenty of guys message me about DeAndre Hopkins kind of having a slump. Like, the dude's still elite. Like, he's super talented, and he should have had multiple touchdowns even last week against a good Indy defense. They had one called back. So those type of players, you don't move unless you're getting a king's ransom.
Yeah, I'm definitely not. Mike Evans is one of my favorite players. The volume's still there. The air yards are still there. It's likely that his second half's going to be much better than his first half. Uh, Hopefully they connect better after that bye week. Um, Evan says another quick question here. I've got Josh Allen or Drew Brees to start this week. Who you going with?
Well, Josh Allen, because Breeze is practicing, but I wouldn't.
If Brees starts, who are you going with?
Who's Buffalo playing? I think they're going against. Let's see here.
Uh, they're going against somebody that has a good rush defense because I wrote him up in my cash game article. I just can't remember which one it was. I'm looking up the schedule right now.
That was
We've got Eagles. So Eagles have a terrible secondary, but they have a good rush defense.
John
I
Brown could
feel
have a
like
big game.
John Brown could have a big game. I feel like these competitive games, when we're talking about these rushing quarterbacks, are where we see their real upside. Um, so I definitely have zero problems with starting him. The Saints, where are they at here? Cardinals. I don't have a problem with starting Breeze either.
Yeah, no, either one
Cardinals.
would be fine.
Well, Patrick Peterson definitely did make a difference when he got back last week. So their defense isn't going to be as bad. They do run a lot of plays, but you know what? When I was telling you about Mr. Tom Brady and his 7.21 air yards per pass attempt, one Mr. Drew Brees is like 6.5 something. So they're dink and dunk too, and it works. And I don't know why more teams don't do it. You know, take your shots downfield, but if you work it underneath, man, I don't know,
Well, but
just boggles my mind.
look, I mean, you've mentioned two of the better quarterbacks we've seen in our generation. Like, these guys know to take what they're given and not try to force it. Like, you watch guys like Jameis and some of these other guys, they want to force it because they want to make the highlight play, but it becomes a highlight for all the wrong reasons. Like, these guys, Drew and Tom will always take what the defense gives them. They're just too smart.
Yeah, they definitely just throw it to the open guy, and that's what matters. But I mean, when you have a Michael Thomas or a Julian Edelman, that definitely helps. But you know, more teams should be schemed that way instead of taking so many shots down the field. Like, just do what Belichick does. Like, I don't know why. I mean, it's not as easy to do as I make it out to be, but you don't need to throw for 500 yards every game. Just don't need to.
Yeah, no.
Okay, any other questions in there? I wanted to ask you, Brad. Okay, we're getting, obviously we did the mid-season um,
Yeah.
outlook last week, but now we're 7 weeks deep, over halfway for normal fantasy leagues that do 13 regular season games.
Right.
Some of our RotoHeat leagues do 12 weeks. Uh, we got to figure out where we're at playoff wise, especially when we're talking about like redraft. You have to start making moves. Um, because you have to get ready for those playoffs and redraft. A lot of waiver or a lot of trade deadlines are coming up in the. I've heard some people say we're already this week. I think that's a little bit early to be doing it. I would probably in redraft, week 9, week 10. In Dynasty, we don't do them until, the last regular season week. When the Thursday games start on the last regular season week, that's when, I have the deadline set for all of our leagues. So you can't be acquiring players, going into the playoffs or whatever. Um, but what guys are you looking to target um, if you're, in the running and you see that you're really weak at running back? And we'll keep this kind of like redraft centric, and then we'll look at dynasty uh, after that.
Um, I let me pull up in RotoHeat 96er, which isn't
That's
even
not that's
not redraft. None of my see, I'm only actually in
okay. That's I'm not in any redrafts,
I'm in
so that's
I'm in
fine. We
three
still have to talk about it.
redrafts, and I don't like trading in redrafts is always so annoying. Like I hate trading in redrafts because guys are just crazy.
Well, we got to talk about it because we're a fantasy football media outlet. So think redraft. Think
Yeah, I
redraft.
mean,
Who would you target?
so the hardest thing to do is to get some of the big names right now. In a few of the redrafts that have been, and I sent offers out a few weeks ago as you start to see who's the good teams and who aren't. So you really have to kind of look at who are those mid tier guys that have good schedules coming up. So I look at playoff schedule. Those weeks who's going to be good. So teams like I targeted like Carlos Hyde a few places because I can get him for cheap. I don't like him, but in redraft, he at least is playable and could help me, especially with the carry on Johnson IR stuff. So you look for guys like that. You look for guys like I've got Kareem Hunt stashed in a few redrafts because guys would draft him and then trade him. So I got him. He'll be coming back in 2 weeks. He comes back at a perfect time. So those are kind of two big running backs that I think you can get for a decent price. What about you? Who's a couple running backs that you like that you might be able to actually acquire?
Okay, first off, I think in redraft you've got a couple different situations where you can take advantage of the trade deadline and everything, right? You've got a really good team and you might have extra depth where, somebody on the bubble really needs that stud. Uh, or they need multiple spots filled. So you got to figure out like where you are at. What exactly do you need? So if you're really looking for a stud, somebody in fourth or fifth place, on the outside looking in, you might be able to trade like a if you have an extra wide receiver two and a running back two, you might be able to figure something out and get one of those top tier running backs because they need quantity rather than quality. That's where it's a lot different in redraft in my mind than it is in dynasty because in dynasty nobody's ever going to think that way. They're not going to be like, well, I need this. Somebody in redraft might trade you Christian McCaffrey if it gets them 2 to 3 pieces because they're on the outside looking in. That's never you're never going to get that deal in dynasty. But guys like Todd Gurley, I'm still buying, especially in redraft formats. I would still be buying. Um, uh, Tevin Coleman's another one. This dude's getting 20 touches a game. It hasn't looked the best over the last 2 weeks, but if I can get that volume, I know I've got a floor with him.
All right.
And I'm going to be able to put him in my lineup, and he's not going to get shut out. I mean, barring an injury or something like that. Um, uh, let's see. Who else do I like the rest of the season? I would be taking shots on Kenyon Drake with the trade deadline coming up.
Right.
I've seen people mention Detroit if Carrion's going to be out for a while, being a good spot for him. I would love to see that. Even though I wouldn't want him in the division. But there are some teams that'd be looking. Eh, Yeah, those would probably be the guys that I'd be looking at. Kenny and Drake, you might be able to get off the waiver wire or really, really cheap.
Sure.
But if he gets traded, you're making a bet on him getting traded and it being a good situation, and it could pay off big time if they utilize him correctly. Austin Eckler
Oh, love
is another one,
him.
right? This dude, Melvin Gordon's not good.
Yep.
We
Eckler's
talked about
still
it last
producing.
week. He went out and had another pooper. I think Eckler's going to just tear Chicago to shreds this week through the air. He's not going to do a lot of damage on the ground, but the Bears over their last 4 games have given up, or last 3 games have given up over eight receptions to the running back per game for 65 yards. They're giving up, they're still only giving up 3.7 yards per carry, but they've given up 1.5 rushing touchdowns per game. Uh, and it's been ugly. But, this dude's probably going to have 8 receptions this week for 75 yards and maybe a score. Um, I definitely think going forward, he's going to be more involved than anybody anticipated with Melvin Gordon back.
Agreed. Definitely agree.
Okay,
What do you?
dynasty
Okay,
wise,
go ahead.
that's where I was going to go next. Is now dynasty. Um, if you're, and we're gonna, all this is going to be obviously if you're winning, because that's when you're trying to acquire players, and not draft picks like Paul would try to sell us, like candy bars at school. Um, so who do you have any preferences other than who we talked about that are more long-term plays? Devonta Freeman was another one that you could target, and maybe he's for both, because he's getting so much work in the passing game, and them Sanu targets went somewhere else, so he may even get an uptick there. But are there any other guys like Kerryon Johnson who's hurt, or maybe somebody like David Montgomery that hasn't been productive yet, but if the Bears ever get half a brain, they'll run the ball. Um,
Yeah. So right now I'm gonna jump to receiver because I'm in the middle of negotiating with a guy right now. He with the Emmanuel Sanders news, there's a guy in one of my dynasty leagues that's in need of a quarterback, and he is playoff bound. Like he's a solid team, but he really needs a better quarterback. And I'm in a decent spot, so I'm going after Debo Samuel to try to build up my depth for future because I have some young receivers, but not a lot. So I'm having the conversation about Carson Wentz for Debo in a package, some sort of package. So right now my offer is like Debo in a couple seconds is what I've kind of been pushing to see if he'll do Debo in 2 seconds for Carson Wentz because he has a couple seconds.
did you say it was a super flex?
It is not a super flex. It's one QB, but
It's a
his one QB is nothing right now.
If you get that package, you just basically bent that dude over, and you're going to jail for
Well, he doesn't. I mean,
breaking laws.
his QBs are
It
brutal.
doesn't
No, he's
matter.
got
It
nothing.
doesn't. Oh man, I sometimes I wish I was in that position to take advantage of somebody like that. Like, I just in a one QB league, like literally if he said I'll give you Debo for Carson Wentz, I'm like, yes. And you're like, I might get 2 seconds on top of that, and I'm like, what?
Oh,
Um, it blows my mind that people pay that much for a quarterback. He could go. Okay, listen to this. Last week, my starting options in one of my leagues, and this is my $250 buy-in, and I needed to win really bad. My options were Ryan Fitzpatrick against Buffalo, which would have worked out. He ended up scoring 21 fantasy points against Buffalo. Would have
right.
worked out. Or that was my only option because Chase Daniel, Mitch Trubisky came back. But those were my two options at the beginning of the week. So I traded for Dalton, a third for Dalton, and you're talking about getting Debo in 2 seconds for Carson Wentz, who hasn't been playing particularly well. And rumors are that his number one wide receiver talked shit about him. Like, it cracks me up. I love it. Um, you guys are quiet out there in the chat. Make sure you drop those questions. Also, make sure you hit subscribe, like, share, whatever. Share us with your friends. Uh,
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
at this point, I try to trade for young guys that aren't performing because it seems like there's always somebody willing to sell those what would have been hot draft picks at this point in the season. So if there's a guy that'll do it, I'll do it. I had a guy offer me earlier today, and I turned it down a couple of seconds for Terrell Williams. Well, I don't want to trade Terrell Williams. He's a nice depth receiver, and he's the number one in Oakland. Like, I'm just not interested.
Are you
So
rebuilding or are
no,
you
my team is very competitive. Like I'm like I've only lost like twice. Like I'm tops
the
of my
dude's
division.
okay? The dude's back to practicing and scores a touchdown every game that he's played with Oakland. So
Right. I'm like, yeah, I'm
I'll
not.
I'll
Got it.
hold on to him for that too.
He wound up trading
Um,
those 2 seconds and Sony Michelle to get Tyler Boyd. A trade just went through just while we were on air. So I was like, oh well, I'd have rather that deal if I was him anyway. Like I like Tyler Boyd more.
yeah, that's another guy that people are down on.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I just think that when we're looking at guys that you could pick up in Dynasty, obviously Christian McCaffrey's probably not on many losing rosters, so you're not going to be able to pry him away from anybody or anything. But guys like Alvin Kamara, who missed a little bit of time, had a bad game. Um, he might be on a losing roster. You might be able to get him. Uh, my biggest thing is like the Gurleys and the Colemans. Uh, Montgomery's somebody that you might be able to get really cheap. He was a lot of people had him. Mid first round pick. This past summer, obviously has not got volume at all. But this Bears team has to figure something out because passing the ball does not work with Mitch Trubisky and Chase Daniels. So maybe they finally go run heavy instead of pass heavy. I couldn't believe. I think they ran the ball 6 times last week. It blows my mind.
Right.
Um, uh, Devin Singletary, who hasn't really played, he might be a guy that gets more action in the second half. Miles Sanders, I look for those guys that could pop, that haven't really done anything yet, and the owners might not even be willing to trade those guys, but they're guys that are worth looking into. And then yeah, receivers, redraft. So we're probably looking at some older guys. Who are you targeting? Who do you think has a big second half?
Well, I mean, if you're thinking older, I would definitely think probably the oldest and Larry Fitzgerald. I think he's going to consistently still give you week-to-week production this season.
Well, it doesn't have to be older. I'm just saying.
Well, I know, but
draft,
he's
we're
a
going to
guy that
prioritize those
he's
guys.
a guy that people just continue to be willing to sell. So he's a guy that I would go after because he gets the targets. Like he's getting peppered with targets, and he catches everything. I mean, he's very good still. Another guy that should continue to bounce back would be like a Sammy Watkins. I love Sammy in redraft too. Like I would expect him to have a better second half than first, just because he was hurt a little bit. Those are two names of guys that I've seen floated around in the few redraft leagues I'm in the chats. What about you?
Robbie Anderson. Jets have their easy portion of their schedule coming up. I don't care what anybody says. Like right now, if I had a young quarterback, I would not play them against the Patriots.
No.
Because they just wreck you and they wreck your guy's confidence. I mean, they wrecked his confidence, Sam Darnold's confidence, so much that he admitted to seeing ghosts
Yep.
on the sidelines. So him and Crowder both are guys that I think would help winning rosters. And people may be down on them because of that game. You might have to do it before they play again. But those are two guys that I like. I think the Sanu's and the Emmanuel Sanders are, even with the moves, I think, this week people are probably going to try to sell high. So this week's probably not the time to do it, but if after they play a game, which may be kind of slower with the first week in, I think next week you might be able to get them a little bit cheaper. And then depending on where you are, like there are guys like T.Y. Hilton and Allen Robinson that are, averaging top 5, 6 wide receiver numbers per game, but people don't realize it because it's been kind of quiet. Especially with A-Rob, just how bad the Bears offense has been. People don't realize that he's averaging 17 and a half points per game, uh, PPR wise. So those are guys that you might be able to sneak from somebody because they don't realize just how good they've really been so far. Because I mean, Ty's only played 5 games, but I think he's averaging over 18 points per game, even with that Jacoby Brissett guy that nobody had faith in before the season.
I like Jacoby Brissett,
We both did. We both said that he wasn't going to be as bad as people thought.
and he's turned out that way.
Yes, he has.
I,
He does have that low air yards per uh, attempt though. He's another guy that has that. But that's what I'm
okay.
saying. Like they're using it and it's working fine for them.
Yep.
And like when I started looking at those and I started looking at the quarterbacks that were much higher on that list, I mean there are quarterbacks that are averaging twice as much as those guys. And I'm like, whoa, what? No wonder why these guys throw 800 interceptions.
Yeah, no, I'm okay with it. Take what you get.
Absolutely. Um, so what about like younger guys? Are there any younger guys that you're looking at taking a shot on?
We're talking redraft still?
Yeah.
Well, the only redraft players that I would be willing to jump at are guys like a Kyler Murray, because he's producing week in and week out.
He plays wide receiver.
Well, no, but there's not a wide receiver that's young that I would take a shot on right now. I mean, like DK has potential,
DK.
but he's so up and down. Like,
right, but I've always said like you don't draft the rookie wide receivers in redraft. Let other people draft them, and then get them for real cheap week 6, week 7, because a lot of those guys don't start hitting until the second half of the year. Uh, he's definitely a guy that in redraft, like you could pretty much get for nothing right now, I think. And he could end up being a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 in the second half with the opportunity that he's getting. I mean, he's getting the opportunity.
right, very true. So, what about you? Is there anyone other than DK that you think has potential?
Well, Paul just mentioned Sutton, but I don't think that's happening anymore. Dude's wide receiver 11 on the year. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
and Paul said Sutton, but that's went from young to known.
yeah,
So that's definitely a guy that I would love to add, but it's probably not going to happen. Um,
easily.
I'm looking at Whopper here. I wanted to see where uh, Mr. DK Metcalf was. He was up there. Marquise Brown's one also that's been hurt.
Yeah,
That people might sell a little low on in redraft, and those guys I'm obviously targeting anytime I can in Dynasty. Really in Dynasty is I'm looking at the same guys we've talked about no matter what.
sure.
Like I think people like they disregard or they overvalue the youth a lot at this time of year. And if you can sneak some of these older guys, you can win championships, and that's the most important thing. I don't know what I was looking at anymore because I was talking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those I can't think of too many more young guys that would really jump off the page to me.
Okay, quarterbacks, tight ends. We can talk about them together. Like, are there any that you're like, I really want to get those guys because I think they're going to improve a lot in the second half?
Um, the guys that I've targeted, at this point are going to be hard to get, like Gerald Everett's, who I targeted early in the season because I've liked him, but he hadn't produced. Well, he's gone off like the last 3-4 weeks in a row and had decent production. So him, a guy like Dallas Goedert, I love. But Ertz has obviously continued to, kind of take some of that. But you're still seeing he's still getting some action. I think he'll get better in the second half. because you're seeing the progression. They're getting Goddard more involved. So those are kind of two tight ends I like. Like I said, Kyler Murray is the quarterback that I would try to target if I was trying to target a quarterback. If you're in a super flex situation, if you can get Ryan Tannehill still, I would go after him. He seems to look pretty good in that Tennessee offense, but he's a short-term guy, not a long-term fix. What about you? What are some names that you're interested in?
Well, it's funny. Paul says, "How pissed are we all that we missed the Gerald Everett boat?" And I just want to say that I didn't miss the boat. Like, I'm driving that boat. I have Gerald Everett almost everywhere.
Yeah, I've kind of been on and off the boat. Like I have him in a couple leagues, and I traded him in a couple leagues. Like I like him. I like the talent. I like the opportunity. I just didn't like that they never used him. So, at some point we had to assume his talent would outweigh their inability to get him the ball, and they finally get him the ball. So
Yeah, I don't want to say the inability to get him the ball, just the
they weren't game
fact that,
planning for him.
well, right, it wasn't an inability. It was just that they've got three receivers. Um, Paul also says I'm targeting Njoku because he seems forgotten. I definitely don't have a problem with that.
Sure.
Ricky Seals Jones is another guy. I mean, they're using Ricky Seals Jones in that offense right now, um,
Who knows
and
how long?
he's probably free. Well, right, but I mean, if you need help now, tight end is such a cesspool, right? After you get past the Wallers, Hoopers, Henrys, Kittle, Kelsey, and Ingram, it's a shit show.
Right.
Like you have six legit options right now. Everything else is just like poop on a stick. Um, OJ Howard's the guy you could look at, right? They just had their bye week. Maybe they finally put something in the offense to get him going. Who knows? Um, but they paid Higbee because he's a good blocker too. He's
Yep.
good both ways. Everett is literally a wide receiver playing tight end. I thought he was like the poor man's Evan Ingram in that draft. Like those two guys I targeted everywhere.
That makes sense.
um, when I'm looking at quarterbacks, like I think Matt Stafford has like been so underrated.
Oh yeah.
Um, this year, uh, he's been putting up some good fantasy numbers. I guess if you think Cam Newton is going to return to anything, you could take a look at him. We know when this guy's healthy, he's a top 5 fantasy option. If not, even if not a good NFL quarterback, um, you know, uh, Aaron Rodgers is starting to throw it a little bit more. Obviously, he had a hell of a day this past Sunday. Andy Dalton's another one. Um, this offense is just so up and down. Uh, but out of the guys, it's so weird because you look at the quarterbacks right now. Like we don't know who's going to be starting and who's not going to be starting 3 weeks from now, right? Nick Foles is starting to practice. Is
Right.
Minshew even going to be playing in next week? Kyle Allen, is he going to be playing 2 weeks from now? Uh, Mitch Trubisky, are the Bears going to trade for somebody and him not be starting? Like, what's going to happen? Teddy Bridgewater, Breeze is practicing now, but is Breeze going to play this week or does he re-injure that hand? Patrick Mahomes, how long is he going to be out? Like I've never seen anything like this. This is the weirdest year when it comes to quarterback, but that's why I'm glad that I don't have a lot invested in that position. Not that it was because of this reason, but just because, as we've seen, these nobodies have come in, the Minshews and the Kyle Allens, and literally if you started them, it didn't kill your team.
Right.
Um, but that's why I don't invest a lot in the quarterback spot. And unless I'm in a super flex, like I'm probably not even looking for a quarterback ever.
Yeah. No.
Um, but tight end, I guess the guys that I could see, making improvements in the second half. If anybody's down on Hawkinson, if anybody's down on Fant, I could definitely see them going and improving in the second half. As I said, opportunity's been there for them, uh, but it hasn't been converted. I mean, obviously we've seen Hawkinson like break out in the first game and
Right.
then kind of slow down. Um, Vance McDonald's another guy. They may rely on him a lot more than they did in the first half before their bye week. Uh, those guys, plus, dynasty wise, Goddard, I wrote him up yesterday, has been getting more and more involved in that offense. I think he's a superior talent to Ertz. Obviously, Ertz isn't bad, but I think Dallas Goddard might be one of the top three most talented tight ends in the league. Like,
Yeah,
honestly,
absolutely.
he
Pure
has to grow
talent.
into it, like just raw, pure talent. I think the guy's like really, really good. He's showing it over the last couple weeks. Uh, as the tight end 5 over the last 2 weeks. Uh, and I definitely like buying him right now while Ertz is still there. Um, People might think they're selling high right now, but this was a guy that I was willing to take like with the 6th overall pick in last year's draft. Like, I liked him that much, and I would rather get my tight ends when they're cheap like this in Dynasty
Hmm.
than pay for them up. But Jared Cook, another option. That's down there. So those are some guys that I would really look at, um, redraft or dynasty wise. And then I think somebody that you really have to keep an eye on in dynasty, and you may have missed the boat, is Irv Smith out there in
Oh, yeah.
Minnesota. 5 for 60 this past week. Using him more, but is that what? Maybe what we'll see when Thielen gets back is another drop off, and you might have another buying window. But I think he's going to be used basically as a wide receiver this week, tomorrow night. Probably going to have a good week. So if you want to sell high, you'll have that opportunity. But you might have to wait a week or two to buy him if you want to use him long term.
Makes sense. Yeah, I would agree.
Do we have any other questions out there? Ah, that's funny. Paul said, speaking of rookie tight ends, Irv Smith looks good. Um, Yeah, there you go. I talked
Boom.
about that, then read your thing. 3 for 3 on RotoHeat preseason on the buy teddy bear. He's looking genuinely good. I think that's definitely uh, what's the word? Objective. Um, he looks good in certain aspects. Other aspects, I'm not so sure. Um, I gotta I gotta log into this computer over here for a second because I have this sheet that I made up with the quarterback yards per attempt. Teddy Bridgewater, 39th,
Wow.
6.23 yards per attempt. Derek Carr, right above him, 6.47. Ryan Fitzpatrick is almost double, 10.63.
That's brutal.
Okay, so the two guys that turned the ball over like more than anybody, him and Winston, who were teammates last week,
Yeah.
or last year, I mean, both of them they're the only two over 10.6 yards per attempt. So this is what I was saying earlier. Like, why don't more of these teams like just say, okay, well, we want to run 8 yard routes and make stuff happen up the field. Like utilize Albert Wilson and try to get stuff after the catch, like Edelman does for the Patriots, or Golden Tate will do for the Giants, or anything like that. You look at the guys with success, and that's what they're doing. Aaron Rodgers, 8.4. He's like right in the middle of somebody like Tom Brady and Ryan Fitzpatrick, or Deshaun Watson, 9.3. Patrick Mahomes, 9.9.
Wow.
But Patrick Mahomes just isn't, him and Wilson are at 9.9 and 9.6. But they just, like, I think they're so far and above everybody else in the league as the top two quarterbacks.
Right.
Then maybe Deshaun Watson, but your boy Matthew Stafford, 10.29.
He's
But
he's
he's got the Galladay and Marvin Jones out there that can
You'll
catch
get it.
those passes.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so I found that really interesting because somebody, they were talking about Tom Brady, Josh Gordon, and how Tom Brady can't throw it down the field. And I don't necessarily think it's that Tom Brady can't throw it down the field. That offense works off of getting the ball out of your hand in under 2.5 seconds, a lot of times under 2 seconds. And I don't care what downfield threat you are, like unless you run literally like a 3 second 40, you're not going to be getting, you got to build up that speed from a standstill. So it just doesn't work very well for those guys. So, but I was like, you know what? I'm wondering what these guys are attempting per pass, because he said Brady ranks 5th in attempted passing yards. I'm like, well, yeah, but he's also the 5th, or he's 14th or so, whatever it was. But he's attempted the 5th most passes on the year. So everything's skewed unless you break it down to a per pass and understand where they go. And
Makes sense.
I like doing that stuff with numbers. So you know what, dude? I think we're getting out of here in an hour and 15 minutes because I think people are watching baseball tonight. I think that's why it was a little quiet. We got World Series baseball. Even Fox, or even other stations cancel their shows during the World Series in order to get their viewership back. So
that's okay.
So yeah,
I
think we will have the shortest week that we've had, and I don't know how long. At about an hour and 15 minutes. I love it. I'm happy I got stuff to do. I got a meeting in the morning, so that'll give me some stuff done. But just in case, if you have any questions, you're watching, get them in now because we're getting ready to go. We'll give you that, and then we'll get a sales pitch ready. You know what? Let's not even worry about a sales pitch tonight. You know where to find us, RotoHeat.com. Follow us on Twitter. Instagram. We're starting to pump stuff out on Instagram. We've got some... here's one for you guys, okay? We are going to produce some rookie or some prospect videos.
Yep.
We're going to produce some of those. We're going to produce them ourselves, and we're going to put them on YouTube. And we are going to charge you $0, not behind a paywall. Because you know what?
That's just a dirty thing to do.
Oh, you went there.
I had to.
Yeah, I mean, NCAA has a lot of money, a lot more than me. No, but we've got some good stuff coming. I've got a lot of stuff. I've got a lot of stuff planned out that people don't know about yet. We're gonna have a lot of changes coming for the good, and we've got a couple new team members that are going to be coming on here in the next couple days. We are always looking for more. So if you want to write fantasy football content, or if you want to live stream, podcast, anything like that, hit me up at rick@rotoheat.com. Go to rotoheat.com, and in the top right corner, there is a join the team link. You can hit that, fill that out, and it'll come to my email. Or you can hit me up on Twitter at RotoHeatRick. Or hit Brad up at RotoHeatBrad, and we'll get you going. I just want to say, we've had writers, move on to work with Sports Illustrated, and we've had writers interview for NFL Trade Rumors. That'll be one Brad Menendez, and people are noticing what we're doing. And I've got a couple other partnerships that I'm working on right now that could definitely put us a little bit ahead of the curve here. No questions came in, so that's going to be the sales pitch. You know where to find us, rotoheat.com, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, everywhere, RotoHeat. You can find us. And Brad, you got any last words? You better say something.
We appreciate you guys hanging out, and keep. We really need you to share the YouTube. We need you guys to pump out and do your best to tell everyone how great RotoHeat is, so that we can get the subscribers up. Because we want to reach a broader audience. We feel like we have a really good team, and we appreciate you guys supporting. So continue to support, continue to talk about it. Continue to send us your questions. Feel free to DM us, just not on Facebook because nobody pays attention to that. the DMs on Facebook.
I just have too many.
Well, yeah, because it overflows. So jump in the chats, find us on Facebook, so we can get you in Discord and keep the conversation
Okay,
going.
here's the easy way to get in Discord, and I got to get Brad to realize these short links.
Oh
RotoHeat.com/Discord.
yeah,
You can go rotoheat.com/YouTube, rotoheat.com/Twitch, and that'll push you right over to wherever you need to go.
I dig.
But yeah, don't worry, Brad, because there's some plans on. A lot of people are going to be seeing what we're doing, so don't worry about
That's it. I like it.
Just write more articles because I'm not paying for this stuff until we have some articles on the website. But for all of you out there watching, hit the like, subscribe, notification, whatever, wherever you're at. We'll be back. I'll be back Sunday morning, 10 a.m. to noon Eastern time, with injury news, start, sit, matchups, whatever, pre-gaming. Sunday morning, 10 to 12 Eastern time, getting ready for those games. All right, everybody.
Peace.
Have a good night. Don't forget, make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any more fantasy football content from the RotoHeat.com team. Also, right there, playlist. Hit it. Watch the videos. Do it. You want to, do it.